place with late night television. Nobody gives a fuck about it anymore.
I know.
And it's slowly, you have a bad business model and you're not adapting.
Yeah. Yeah, the creativity's gone for late night comedy, right? Like, that's not really a thing anymore.
Last night was the 96th Academy Awards show, and while you might have missed it, there was one clear winner. No, not Oppenheimer. It was sanctimonious leftists for their lead role in pretending they are better than you. Several people shared in this achievement. Winner number one, Jimmy Kimmel. For the fourth time, Kimmel hosted the Oscars before an adoring crowd of Hollywood stars who laughed and curried favor with the man who wore blackface so many times he's second only to Justin Trudeau.
Just when Jimmy Kimmel seemed comfortable sitting on the late-night throne, Joe Rogan and Megyn Kelly stepped in and completely changed the mood. Rogan took apart the tired comedy routines piece by piece. Megyn pointed out the arrogance with the focus of a seasoned prosecutor. And Jimmy? He went from delivering jokes to looking like he was struggling to keep up. So what exactly did they say that turned the king of monologues into the center of the chaos? Well, it's even messier than a writer's room on a deadline. This wasn't just another late-night roast. It felt more like the final curtain call.
Kimmel?
Yeah.
No, it's him, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
good. That's a good one.
He's a comic.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I mean, he used to host The Man Show. I mean, he's done some pretty outrageous shit back in the day.
Yeah.
You know, for hee-hees and haw-haws.
No, that's a good joke on top of a good joke.
Yeah, it's a good joke. Funny thing to say. He's had a real problem with Elon from the beginning of this thing, but it's like he's in this leftist thought bubble. He is in the most leftist thought bubble available, which is Hollywood. And, you know, and I think also, you know, he famously, there's some videos of him in blackface, and those came out, and he had apologized for them, and I think he took that hit and, like, really doubled down the other direction.
Jimmy Kimmel once called himself America's late-night conscience. And just like that, therapists everywhere probably started questioning their career choices. Because if he's the nation's moral compass, we're all lost in the woods carrying magnets. Let's talk about Jimmy Kimmel, the human version of a social media reply guy with a network budget. Over the years, he's gone from hosting goofy comedy bits to acting like everyone's personal life coach. His whole image now sits somewhere between moral lecturing and frat house nostalgia. It's like a TED Talk and a beer bong somehow merged into one person. And every time someone disagrees with him, the comedy suddenly takes a back seat.
Fondness for the practice. Yes, some of the very same celebrities who wanted you to believe they were horrified after yours truly said in 2018 that people used to don dark makeup in order to imitate well-known black celebrities and it wasn't a big deal. Absolutely ate up the performance by Hollywood darling Mr. Kimmel, whose blackface costumes included his oft-repeated bit as basketball star Karl Malone.
Now, Karl Malone never seen no flying saucer himself, but if he do, that's gonna be a spooky time.
Jimmy's latest accomplishment? Getting completely outshined by a UFC commentator and a former journalist who spent years covering some of the toughest stories in the world. Joe Rogan and Megyn Kelly. And no, this wasn't some formal debate with a moderator and a timer. It was simply two people taking apart what little relevance Jimmy still had left, piece by piece. By the end, his public image looked less like a late-night powerhouse and more like the forgotten sidekick in a buddy cop movie.
Back in the day when I was on the prime time of Fox and you were on the prime time of CNN, a couple of hours after our shows ended, late-night comics would come on, and they occasionally would make us laugh, Piers. I mean, occasionally they understood that they were in the game of making everyone laugh. As you know, they've abandoned that game now, and they're just political operatives out there. Colbert, Kimmel, Seth Meyers, who I struggle to even mention that guy's name. He's such an absolute prick. I can't stand him. But anyway, it's just my thought bubble out loud.
And let's be honest, Megyn Kelly isn't known for handing out praise to everyone she meets. She's more the type to hold up a mirror and tell you exactly what she sees. And when she pointed that mirror at Kimmel's career, the picture wasn't flattering. What stared back wasn't comedy, it was a decline. This is a guy who once sat down with some of Hollywood's biggest names, but now seems more focused on delivering frustrated monologues because someone online didn't agree with him. These days, his version of taking a risk is changing the wording slightly, while recycling the same Trump joke he's been using since 2016.
You all know what they saw. They saw what we saw. They saw the frail elderly man who needed help getting off the stage. They're just too chicken shit to tell us about it because they accurately deduce that he could still be the Democratic nominee and they don't want to ding him up. Maybe you give Barbara a pass. Who gives a damn what this singer saw or says? But you know what? Jimmy Kimmel happens to be employed by ABC, which happens to have a rather large news organization. And he has been one of President Trump's most vocal critics. Where are you, Jimmy? On vacation? Not good enough. You can still use your thumbs to send out a tweet. You could set the record straight right now, but you won't.
Joe Rogan, a guy whose whole brand is basically sitting down for hours to talk about everything from former CIA operatives to martial arts, brushed Jimmy aside without much effort. That's how little weight Kimmel seems to carry in the cultural conversation these days. Rogan could spend 2 hours talking about elk meat and strange adventures, and it would still feel more engaging than Kimmel's latest rant disguised as comedy. The decline of Jimmy Kimmel hasn't been a slow fade. It's looked more like a dramatic fall with the spotlight still on. His show feels less like must-watch late-night TV and more like people asking why it's still going. The monologues often sound more like political lectures, and they're about as entertaining as a tax seminar delivered by someone fighting a cold. And then there's the comedy itself. Some people call sarcasm the lowest form of wit. Jimmy seems to have moved past sarcasm and straight into frustration. The jokes don't land like clever observations anymore. They feel more like complaints wrapped in punchlines, written by an online group chat that's run out of fresh ideas.
That sort of self-censorship and the idea of being a more empathetic person is a good thing, right? But as long as it's reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, the problem with that kind of stuff is it continues to go in the same direction where more and more things become forbidden and toxic to the point where, you know, the Elon Musk joking around about my pronouns are prosecute Fauci. Jimmy Kimmel made a tweet back to him. He said, your pronouns are ass and hole, which is pretty funny. But then
Did he really?
Yes. And so then I read that and there was people saying, please don't joke about pronouns.
Joe Rogan, a guy known for hosting some of the most unusual conversations on the internet, often comes across as more grounded than Jimmy Kimmel these days. That's how far the gap seems to have grown. While Rogan keeps people talking, Kimmel often looks stuck repeating the same talking points. And Megyn Kelly didn't hold back either. She took aim at what she sees as Kimmel's biggest weakness, his smugness. The criticism was simple. He acts bold, but he's surrounded by friendly audiences, applause signs, and people who already agree with him. What's ironic is that Kimmel now presents himself as a moral authority, despite building his early career on a very different style of entertainment. Today, he often sounds like that one person who discovers politics and suddenly turns every conversation into a lecture. For him, disagreement rarely seems like a debate. It feels more like a full-blown crisis.
Jimmy Kimmel was very upset that Donald Trump took a shot at Taylor Swift. Trump was making fun of the fact that she got booed openly at the Super Bowl and he got cheered to the high heavens. And Jimmy Kimmel didn't much like that and had the following to say.
Trump was at the game. He got a big thrill because some of the crowd booed Taylor Swift when they put her up on the Jumbotron, which of course made Harry Conman Sr. very happy. He posted 3 times about this. After the game, he wrote, the only one that had a tougher night than the Chiefs was Taylor Swift. She got booed out of the stadium. MAGA is very unforgiving. Well, she didn't get booed out of the stadium. Unlike you, she stayed for the whole game.
And the jokes? You could find fresher humor at a junior high talent show. At least they're still trying. Jimmy's punchlines feel like they were pulled from old trending hashtags and recycled into something he hopes still lands. It's not that he stopped trying to be funny. It's that he seems to think being right is the same thing as being funny. It isn't. Comedy doesn't survive when it turns into a lecture. Even Joe Rogan, for all his long-winded talk, understands the value of listening. Jimmy doesn't really listen, he performs, like everything is pre-written and approved in advance. His whole act now feels like repeating the same safe worldview on cue. And Joe Rogan and Megyn Kelly didn't just challenge it. They cut through it like it wasn't even there. Because no amount of polish or applause can hide when someone is trying too hard to prove they're a good person instead of just being one.
And it was the Eagles fans who were booing her. But you're right, it's all about you. It's always all. Trump's just jealous of Taylor Swift because she has more followers and more money and no kids than he does.
Okay. But by the way, I was there all the way through, and she was gone. She was missing in action for most of the second half. So I don't know what he's talking about. Trump left at his previously designated time, which was, I think, 8:02. That had been scheduled, and that is when he left. And it's a little harder, Jimmy, when you're the president of the United States, because if you leave when everybody else is leaving, you completely F them over because no one can move anywhere. It's total gridlock in the city. Hello?
Ever notice how Kimmel can't go 5 minutes without bringing Trump into a joke? It feels like he's stuck on repeat, replaying the same bit long after the world moved on. While everything else has changed, he's still chasing the same punchline like it never left the stage. Even his show format feels frozen in time. Monologue, celebrity segment, sketch, end. It's basically reheated cafeteria food, technically a meal, but nobody's excited about it. At this point, you could swap him with a cardboard cutout and a soundboard and most viewers wouldn't notice. Meanwhile, Joe Rogan, sitting in long, chaotic conversations with all kinds of guests, somehow creates more raw discussion than a polished late-night studio with writers, producers, and a live band. And Megyn Kelly didn't even need to push hard. The contradictions just showed themselves. Kimmel seems stuck between two versions of himself, the old shock comedy persona and the modern moral commentator, trying to satisfy audiences that expect completely opposite things. And the result is a version of late night that feels more predictable than provocative.
You know how much it costs to produce Jimmy Kimmel's show? I guarantee you it's tens and tens of millions. It could be as much as 100 million. I have no idea. You know how much Tucker's video cost? Nothing. You know how much Jimmy Kimmel, how many people he gets tuning in on an average night? Just last week, his average was, in the overall, meaning all viewers, 1.5 million. In the key demo, 236,000. Tucker would have been embarrassed to pull that on any night he was on the Fox News channel. That's what they're getting now. Tucker's numbers were 3 times what Jimmy Kimmel gets. And Tucker's little basement video that he did from clearly like his cabin that he broadcasts out of Maine in literally has 21 million views. Okay? 21 million views. Whereas, as I point out, on ABC, a massive network that comes into your home for free that you have to make no effort to find, at best, Jimmy Kimmel can get 1.5 million. He needs to have a little self-perspective before going out there and hurling these insults because he looks a little silly.
And what's really ironic is that there was a time Jimmy Kimmel could have taken things in a more original direction. He had the platform, the reach, and the opportunity to do something different. Instead, it often feels like he built the spotlight around himself. Because when he speaks, it weirdly feels like it's about the topic, it feels like it's about him. Even his activism comes across less like dialogue and more like performance. Joe Rogan and Megyn Kelly, whatever people think of them, at least tend to have open conversations where ideas get exchanged, rather than delivered as monologues. Kimmel's style, by contrast, often feels one-sided, like a lecture dressed up as comedy. There's a kind of irony in a show meant for entertainment turning into something that feels more like a scripted statement than a real exchange. And that's why moments where he gets challenged land so strongly for some viewers. Not because it's personal, but because it exposes how predictable the format has become, late-night comedy that feels more rehearsed than real and more insulated than engaged.
Just this past 2 weeks, they had the Kennedy Center honors the other night where Joe Biden couldn't say Dionne Warwick. He kept calling her Diane, and he didn't know who Barry Gibb was. He kept calling him Billy. You know who else was honored? At the Kennedy Center. You know who else? Billy Crystal. Just FYI, do you know who once opened up the Academy Awards in full blackface?
Oh,
Billy
yeah.
Crystal. Billy Crystal. And do you know who's going to be hosting the Academy Awards this year? Jimmy Kimmel. Do you know who's worn blackface repeatedly and spoken inner city sort of urban accent saying she needs to darn those socks? Jimmy Kimmel as Oprah, as a fat-suited, black-faced, darning socks Oprah. Now, if you are of the left, that's fine. If you are of the right and happen to just say, hey, people used to wear blackface and nobody freaked out about it, you get fired.
So, where does Jimmy Kimmel go from here? Most likely back to the writer's room, where a team tries to figure out what counts as bold in Hollywood this week. You'll return with another polished monologue, another familiar Trump joke, and the same confident delivery, just slightly more careful. But recent criticism exposed something deeper, how rehearsed it all feels. Joe Rogan and Megyn Kelly, in contrast, come off as more conversational and unfiltered, which only sharpens the difference between dialogue and performance. Kimmel's show often feels like it's built from safe, recycled ideas wrapped in studio polish. The intention is commentary, but the result is predictability. Even his attempts at the edge land like something carefully approved rather than genuinely risked. And that's why the contrast hits so hard for some viewers, not because of any single moment, but because the formula feels so consistent. One side delivers, the other performs. One reacts, the other repeats. In the end, the question isn't whether Kimmel is relevant, but whether the format itself still has anything new to say.